member wish to make a contribution tonight? Any other member?
Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Education?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I go back to June 2017, when I lead this country as the government, it was with that victory the Progressive Labour Party pledged to put Bermudians first. And speaking as the Minister of Education, I'm speaking specifically about education, and public education was one of our top priorities on that platform. In our platform, Mr. Speaker, we spoke about the continued reduction in the investment of education by the former government, which was a reflection of what a government's priorities really are, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, this lack of investment and overall caring was evident because I remember only newly being sworn in as a cabinet minister, Mr. Speaker. Less than a week later, I was carrying a cabinet paper to hire companies to go and commence work that needed to be done to abate mold at Delwood Middle School, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this was a school that had closed early in the school year prior due to mold issues, and yet here we were over 3 months later after that school had closed, and just over a month before school was ready to open, no work had started on remediating that school for the upcoming school year, Mr. Speaker. That was indicative of what the former government's reflection, that was a reflection of what the former government's responsibility to education was, Mr. Speaker. But I'm not here to reflect on the things that were not done and the like, because we are the government now. We have to move forward with what it is. But, Mr. Speaker, we were very clear and very concise on how we viewed education and how important it was on moving Bermuda forward and how our priorities were the phasing out of the middle school and moving on with education reform. However, Mr. Speaker, we did not anticipate having to spend the first 18 months of our leadership of the country stabilizing the Bermuda public school system, conducting safety and health inspections of all the buildings that was sorely needed, replacement of critical IT infrastructure so everyday tasks could be performed in what we would consider normal things in a school system at that time. But we had our work cut out for us, but we put our shoulders to the wheel, Mr. Speaker, and we pressed on. Mr. Speaker, despite those beginnings, we can see the successes of continuing to grind, continuing to implement the plan, and continuing to move forward. Mr. Speaker, we're committed. We were committed to having a reformed public school system that will help our children to follow their passions and interests. We want to meet them where they are. We want them to build on the talents and capabilities and achieve their career and future aspirations. We want to create a school system where every one of our children has great learning outcomes and life opportunities for them, for our economy, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, for our country. So, Mr. Speaker, over these last 5 years, many things were put in place that many doubted could even be done. To some, Mr. Speaker, we haven't moved fast enough. To others, interestingly, we're moving too fast. So, when I look back and think about the things that we have done over the last 5 years for our school system, and some of the things that we even take for granted now, because these were things that should have always been there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about now every single one of our schools has high-speed fiber optic internet lines installed and Wi-Fi throughout the school systems, Mr. Speaker. 5 years ago, some of our schools still had dial-up. I don't know if anyone remembers what dial-up is. When you had a modem and you actually had to dial over a phone line. That's what our schools had within them, Mr. Speaker. But all of them also had cable lines coming in with dreadfully slow internet. Today, Mr. Speaker, nearly all of our students have devices that can connect to that wireless network and connect to the school system, whether they're at home, whether they're in school, whether they're sitting in class with their Chromebooks while the teacher is teaching, while we have our blended learning curriculum that's being pushed throughout our primary schools, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, every single student from P1 through P6 has a Chromebook, Mr. Speaker. Virtually every student in the middle school has a Chromebook, Mr. Speaker. And the senior schools, actually, they deal with their own IT systems, but from my understanding, virtually every student in our senior school now has now has devices, Mr. Speaker. We've issued almost 600 devices to staff, Mr. Speaker. So we've implemented remote learning and remote teaching and the like with our students, things we couldn't even have conceived 5 years ago, Mr. Speaker. We have interfaces throughout our system like Schoology, Dreambox, math applications. We now do our registration online. Again, 5 years ago, not even heard of, Mr. Speaker. While those things are what would be considered standard in a school system 5 years ago, they did not exist, but they do exist now. Mr. Speaker, there are certain people in our population, no matter what we do, no matter how hard we work, no matter what we put in place, they will never have anything good to say about education. But you know, Mr. Speaker, to those people, I welcome them with open arms. Come and sit down and talk with us. Let us know what your issues are, because those are the people that are going to make our system better, because those are the people that will consistently see something wrong. And so we need to be talking to them so we can fix what it is that they see. Mr. Speaker, you would have heard me speak in this house about our math intervention program that we've implemented, a program that has seen documented evidence of our primary schools raising their math level. When we look at some of the baseline scores from schools prior to the math intervention level, when we look at them now year on, a year, 2 years on, some schools have improved threefold, Mr. Speaker, 3 times better than what their baseline average was. We've introduced Haggerty reading programs for our reading intervention program so we can measure how well our students are doing within our reading. Mr. Speaker, and we hear about this complaint on a regular basis, and we tend to hear from people who haven't even stepped foot in our schools in years, Mr. Speaker. Our social studies curriculum, Mr. Speaker, involves Bermudian, Caribbean, and African history, things that our people have been struggling and asking for. They are there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to forge ahead and provide the things that our school needs to succeed. We've had extensive consultation with our parish primary school project, Mr. Speaker, and we're forging ahead with that. With selecting the necessary campuses to be redeveloped into parish primary schools. Last year, March 2021, legislation was passed that paves the way for the phasing out of middle schools and the introduction of signature schools. This September, when our S1 students return, when our S1 students, our incoming S1 students will enter into the Barclay Institute and Cedar Bridge Academy, they will be the beneficiaries of a new revised curriculum that involves signature school learning programs throughout, Mr. Speaker. These students will have the benefit of, at the Barclay, the signature programs that are involved in finance and insurance, along with health and social care. At Cedar Bridge, they'll be involved in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, or the trades and services, Mr. Speaker. The work to introduce an education authority is advancing every day, Mr. Speaker, and we're well on the way of moving forward to providing that service to raise the accountability within our school system, Mr. Speaker. We are moving forward with a revised education system that is being co-designed with our educators, with our students, with our parents, with the business society, and the local communities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while some of these things that we've accomplished in education over the last 5 years are quite visible, there are some things that are not as visible but still have the same impact. As I mentioned this morning, Mr. Speaker, there's been an injection of nearly $1 million over the last 5 years that we spend annually, more so to give our students opportunities, those that are looking to continue their education, whether they be out of school and mature adults or students that are just graduating from high school. Mr. Speaker, only just yesterday, I was at the ABIC Awards. I watched as one particular public school student received an award to further her schooling, Mr. Speaker. And why the student stood out for me, Mr. Speaker? This student is a beneficiary of a program that we implemented back in 2017 called the College Promise Program. The College Promise Program allows any student graduating from Barclay and Cedar Bridge who graduates with a 3.0 or higher to attend the Bermuda College for free. So guess what, Mr. Speaker? This particular student was a graduate of the College Promise Program. This student is now will be entering into their 3rd year at Mount St. Vincent University studying accounting with advanced standing. And guess what? Has not had to pay one dime of tuition except for now. And now she's getting awards from ABIC to help pay for that tuition. Mr. Speaker, I reflect on a conversation I had with a father who stopped me on the street and said, "Thank you for the College Promise Program. I estimate that I've saved at least $70,000 in tuition because my son has been able to go to Bermuda College and finish his first 2 years for free without having to pay a dime, Mr. Speaker. This is the type of impact, a caring government, a government that wants to look out for its people, a government that views education as critically important, and that money should not be a barrier for holding anybody back who wishes to advance themselves. That is the type of important support systems that we have in place, that we've put in place in the last 5 years, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to now talk about the Bright Start program that now accepts 3-year-olds into our preschools, yet another program that helps reduce the economic burden on our parents by having a program that takes in students now at 3 years old instead of having to wait till they're 4. I will be remiss to not mention about the curriculum improvements at the preschool level, the new inquiry program that we have, the creative curriculum that we have for our preschools that comes complete with tablets for these 3 and 4-year-olds, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we have tablets for those young ones, and they're learning that at such an early age, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I could literally go on for hours about all of the things that we've done in education, but I also want to take time to point out to those people who will continue to snipe from the sideline instead of getting involved. Come get involved with us. Come talk to us. Come volunteer for one of our sessions with Learning First. You can see how much progress we've made. You can see that there's still much work to do, Mr. Speaker, but we are moving forward. We are looking forward to introducing our new signature program in September 2023 that we're working on already, Mr. Speaker, 18 months in advance. A signature program that will cover tourism and hospitality and education services. We're working on what parish primary schools will look like at the campuses of Francis Patton and Purvis. These are the types of things that we are working on, and we are keeping our shoulder to the wheel, and we are pushing forward, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have continued, as I said, to provide more funding for medians seeking to continue their learning. We are building a system from preschool to high school that will provide our country with graduates who can lead personally and professionally, compete locally, and contribute globally, Mr. Speaker. That is the Department of Education's motto, if anyone did not know that. I want us to pause for this moment and really listen to this statistic, Mr. Speaker. This statistic should point out how much effort we've put into our system and how much we are seeing the fruits of our labor. For the first time in my memory, Mr. Speaker, we had more males graduate from high school this year from Berkeley and Cedar Bridge than we had females, Mr. Speaker. That's no attack on our female students because they're doing excellent as well, Mr. Speaker. But our male students seem to get the short end of the stick whenever anyone talks about public school education, Mr. Speaker. But they're doing it. They are graduating in numbers that we have not seen before. So yes, the interventions that we have put in place, that this government has put in place over the last 5 years, Mr. Speaker, are working. We're seeing the fruits of our labor. We just need to continue to move forward, and we need people to come on board to help us out, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, none of this could have been done without the bulk of the work done by the thousands of hours that have been volunteered by our educators, by the Department of Education staff, our students, business partners, and the general public. Their dedication and their willingness to be patient and trust the development of the process is priceless, Mr. Speaker. As the Minister of Education, I want to take this opportunity to thank every single one of you from the bottom of my heart. I urge you to continue to push forward. Listen to those detractors. Not because you want to be discouraged from them, but learn from them. Soon they will come on board, join us in this journey, because they too will see the light of the things that we are producing from what we are attempting to do with our students, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you permit me, I would like to read a quote from one of our transformation team members that just joined recently in May. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, they said, quote, "The work, now that I've seen the work, it continues to amaze me. It fuels my drive to be a part of education. It's fantastic to see what we're getting from when we get people more informed and on board." Mr. Speaker, these are coming from people who are reluctant to join in. They come, they sit down, and they really see what we're doing. They really understand that we want them to be a part of what it is we're doing. We value their opinion, and we understand that we can't do it without them, and they can't do it without us. And we're now starting to see people turn 360 degrees, Mr. Speaker, from not wanting to participate to going on and finding people for us to participate, Mr. Speaker. As I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, I could speak to this forever, but I think everyone that's listening to us today gets the point. The last 5 years have been nonstop movement forward. We have put things in place that have seen our students excel, pushed them to excel, but the job is far from done, Mr. Speaker. We'll continue to forge ahead. We'll continue to invite each and every one of Bermuda to join us on this journey. We need you, Bermuda. We invite you to come inside, help us out so we can make public education the best possible place and the first choice of anyone that wishes to send their children to school, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to finish up by encouraging all of our fellow Bermudians to be safe. Tomorrow will be the first of the Eastern County Games, Flats versus St. David's, down in St. David's. And in 2 weeks, we will be celebrating the annual spectacle known as Cup Match, Mr. Speaker. While we joke around here about blue and bluer, red and stuff, but I understand that we're all on the same team, Mr. Speaker, and we want everyone to be safe. Please remember that COVID is still out there with us. And while I want all of us to have fun, I encourage you to act responsibly during these next couple of weeks, Mr. Speaker. With that, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for that time. I thank my colleagues for this session that we've had. I look forward to a bit of summer break, but look forward to seeing you back here in September. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Bermuda, for allowing me to serve. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for those few minutes.
Thank you, Minister. Does any other member wish to make a contribution?